Ladies and gentlemen, we're in the beautiful state of New Mexico, although it is snowing a little bit today here in the beautiful state of New Mexico. In moving about the state and the nation, in locating the historical spots, occasionally we meet people that have been many years in these various areas. We're at the Queen's Throne silver mine, one of the richest ever found, and we have a gentleman that he's 90 years young here, and I just want you to meet him. I want to talk to him a minute. I want to introduce you to what his friends call him Pete, but he's Mr. Pedro Martinez.
That's right.
Pedro, it's good to be for you to be visiting with us today.
Right, sir.
And what a fascinating place here. I also want to introduce you, which you're going to be hearing a lot more from him in a moment, and it's the season for it too. Noel from the area here and even down from our area in Oklahoma. Noel, thanks for spending this day with us.
You're welcome.
And I'd like to just hear you two visit about the old mine here in its heydays and on down through the years, and some of the people that were here. I noticed we just pointed these buildings. Mr. Martinez is the last resident of this town and here at the mine, and we're standing in front of his house. It is an adobe house. It has an insulation factor of far more than any of your homes do, and is certainly a warm, comfortable home. But as we view the area around us, I'm going to let Noel and Mr. Martinez tell us a little bit about the town, the mine, and some of the buildings here. I'm going to step back just a little bit. Noel, would you tell us a little bit about the city?
All right, I'll do it. I'll answer you. You
Pete,
ask a question.
Pete, I think it seems to me that I've heard there were 5,000 people here at one time. Is that correct?
How much?
5,000?
Well, the best I know is I think 3,000.
3,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked you once before where they lived because I can't see that many foundations of houses. And you took me around to the west side of the mountain here, back of the house, and you said they lived in those holes there on the mountain. And I pondered that, and then after observation I realized they were dugouts.
Well,
They simply dug a hole back in the mountain and put a roof on.
well, this is fourth where they set the town. This is the first Lake Valley.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is north here,
Mm-hmm.
at the farm, and then over here where the Indians got killed, whoever got
At the
killed.
Mike Evers Ranch.
Yeah, that's the second.
That's the second place.
And then the third one was here, and the highway was that way out there by the Rock House.
Uh-huh.
Okay, they had several bars, and I think then some drunker were going by and set a fire pile of trash that one of the bars had, and that burned up the biggest part of the town. So then they started over here, and we on Main Street on the first Lake Valley.
On the first lake.
On the fourth.
No, fourth Lake Valley.
Yeah.
The first Lake Valley was down at the lake where
At the
the
lake.
Greenman Ranch is today.
Uh-huh.
Because there was water, and over here they had to haul the water or pipe it in.
Flood. I think flood or storms like that was the town away.
A giant flood washed the lake away, the banks, and,
They moved.
then the town moved over here.
And, they moved over here, and then when the train come in, then they moved over here.
When the train came in, the town moved here because they could haul in water.
Yes, so this is a dry town. They had no water. That's hold
right.
the water. And there's a shaft over there that the millers pipe the water to here. for themselves mostly, and a lot of the people buy the millers haul in barrels or in the wagon with barrels from over here.
And the Millers had the grocery store.
And then they said, yeah.
And the Millers built, and they were miners and they had the grocery store.
Yeah.
In later years, Dan Miller and Ed Nunn was partners in what they call the Dude Mine.
Oh, I would know about that.
That was right after World War II. And Ed told me that when everyone else was broke during that Depression and that drought area, that he and Dan Miller had that Dude Mine going, and he said we had some jingling money in our pockets when everyone else was broke. He said they laughed at me when a cowboy went to mining, but he said then when the rough came, I had some jingling money and they had nothing.
Oh, okay. I don't believe it.
You don't believe it.
I know.
Pete knew him, and he says I don't believe it. He knew the
Ed Nunn
times.
was just a cowboy.
Yeah.
Dan Miller was miner engineer.
Right.
Oh.
And I got the picture. We got the picture of Dan Miller there when he went to college.
Mm-hmm. Can he hear that for
Yes.
And then that picture that she showed his mother. And when Dan Miller passed away, he had you know where the log cabin mine is?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, he had that one, that mine.
Oh.
So
That's in the Black Range.
So he left that. Then Dutch Latham took it over because Miss Dan Miller's sister gave it to pass it on to
Dutch.
Dutch, which is boys raised here in the rice, you know. Oh, that's the way. Now I don't know who got it. So
And how did the ranching country develop here? Because the Nuns came to work in the mines.
well,
And the Lathams came to raise cattle, is that correct?
well, that's before my time.
But that's the way they did it, right?
That's what I heard. Yeah.
And how did the Lathams get started with their cattle?
Well, I really don't know, but you know they had sheep. Latham really went by owning sheep.
Sheep ranches.
And one of the Dutch's mother, one of the Latham's wife, she raised doggies and raised a bunch of cattle to the side. Besides the SLC company, which was the Nuns.
Sierra Land and Cattle Company was Nuns and Latham Partnership.
Yeah, and that's how Mrs. Latham started her a bunch of cattle with doggies and so, you know. And she had her own. Oh, that's the way I heard it, and that's the way I saw it when I was younger.
And how long have you lived in this house?
Here? Well, I think we move over. See, leave one house up there first, around, you know, and then we build a little shack up there, and then from there I bought that old house down there. In 20.
I think when I first knew you, you lived in that house over there.
I bought
Yes.
that one in 1925. And I moved from over there, you know, down there. And from there, I moved over here 66 after Dan Miller passed away. So
This was Dan Miller's home.
that's
In
the
the
old
ear-
Miller
in
home.
the old days,
And then
yes.
when they died, well, Dan Miller had it. And then he passed it over to me, well, his sister. After Dan Miller died,
And how long did Blanche live in that house next to you?
I think long about 18, since 18, moving there,
1918.
more or less.
And she lived there most of her life.
She was 52, I think, when she died.
No, I think she was 80-some when she
Oh, no.
Blanche?
No, 82.
82.
I think so.
Well,
when she passed away.
Yeah. Hmm. And from here, you can see the Monument Peak. You can see the lizard climbing over the mountain. You can't show that on your camera, can you?
We'll get it.
Mhm.
No.
And that's Pete told me years ago that you can walk around that mountain and find oxen shoes where they fell off the oxen when they wore the nails out as they're grazing on the. When they weren't working, they turned them loose over there to graze, and you can find oxen shoes there today.
See, when Liza lived there, she walked up there. I forgot nothing. Just a few minutes, she go out there early in the morning, go around that peak and back down here every morning.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, very just a few minutes, not too long. But she was in a trot the whole time. Go up there and make a circle and come back.
Well, now, was this the lady that lived next door?
No, Blanche was crippled. She had a crippled leg. But Pete worked for. How long did you work for Blanche?
Well,
with the oil business.
I started. You see, my starting was in 24, I think. In 24, I went to work at the graphic mine.
Mm-hmm.
When, one time I started, I worked on it for a short time. Then I came back here and I went to work for High Parks. I worked up in top of the range for 6 years for High Parks. And I worked with McGregor's. Sort of off and on related. They're related,
right.
So then the president, and I quit the McGregor's. Mine started. So I quit over there, and then I come to work at the mines for about 3.5. And at the ranch store, they pay you. I got top wages, $45 a month.
Right.
And then I moved, work in the mine. Went out there and asked for a job. They gave me a job because I live here, and they find out we live down here. I live down there. And then I started working after the mine quit, I started working with Blanche's husband, deliver gasoline, because he was a depot agent. And he couldn't take another job, but she got the job when they set up the gas company over here. So he got me to run the deal. I worked, I think, with him 17 years. And then he passed away. And then I went and kept with her. I stayed with her. So she used to say, he worked for me 5 years. Well, she didn't count that I worked
17 years with her
well,
husband.
let's see. No, the other way is I worked 5 years with Slim.
Oh, with Slim, and then 17 with her.
And then I worked 17 with her. I used to tell people that I worked for her 70 years, but the other 5 I worked for her, but she did not.
She wasn't boss then.
No, well, she wasn't much of a boss afterwards.
Somebody came from El Paso and interviewed her about a year or two before she passed away, and I remember reading the story, and they said, this lady of Southern aristocracy lives in Lake Valley, and they called you, which was an insult, they called you her servant. And that's the way Blanche treated all of us. Like,
but her
servants.
I used to go to the mines, and some guy said, Pete said, why don't you come around? I'm out of oil or something. I said, well, got a phone? Why don't you call that? I could have brought it right now. He said, I won't call that old lady.
Do you remember the story? This is getting off of this subject a little, but the story of the Parks when the Indians came and raided the ranch and killed their milk cow and the hired hand. and they danced on top of the mountain that night. And you remember that story?
Yeah, well,
And the Parks came for safety. They jumped in the buggy and came over here to Lake Valley for safety with other people. And
well, Mrs. Carter, the mother, that was with one of the Parks' daughter, told me. He said, we move every time there's the holler about Indians around. Said they go to holler the neighbors, Indians around. Said we go down this house, this was a hotel, and hold up here, stay here while the Indians are around. So this was supposed to be the hotel.
this place was the hotel. This is where they came
Yeah,
Wow.
for safety.
for safety. And the Indians did go and hit the ranch, and
They did kill one
and
man.
they
I don't
killed
know
the
about the
milk
cow,
cow,
but
and-
I know they're supposed to kill the men because,
he went out to find the milk cow because the cow didn't come in, and they got him too. So,
yeah, well, anyway, he just back to the house up there in the little park. Oh, and the pig, they call it Signal.
Signal Peak.
A Signal
they-
Mountain.
They danced on the top of the mountain
Well,
that night around the
the
fire.
flashing lights up there, they figured they're locating some others, they're going through that part of the country.
I think you better get back in because it's getting cold.
It's getting colder, isn't it? Thank you very much for sharing with us, sir. We appreciate it.
I want to show you some more little things.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you pick it up? Just maybe one of you grab it. And... He's going to bring that camera.
okay.
Is it all right if we bring that camera just on by handheld, Pete?
Huh?
Is it okay just to bring that camera handheld like that? Okay.
Oh, she's coming in. He's getting cold.
Well,
Yeah.
you had a good visit. I'll go and show this here, Santa.
That's Mike Day.
This is Mike Day. He's one of my engineers. This is Pete, Mike.
see.
You're gonna take a picture of me and
Come here to
You look pretty. Don't worry about it.
these are for jogging,
come
I'm
right
not worried, but I wear them because I appreciate them to be walk on.
Savannah.
Oh, okay, well,
Just kidding.
Okay. No.
Hello, gentlemen. Beautiful.
Isn't that something? It's big. Yeah, warm. Yes.
I like that.
Oh, that is nice. He's going to show us some old papers here. Yes.
but his little body knows. That's him. That's him up there.
Oh, that's
Have you
pictured.
seen this?
That's pictured Lake Valley. Yes, I've seen that. And there's your monument rock. There's your lizard climbing.
Oh.
That was Lake Valley.
Well, you get that?
Have I got the train there?
The train, where would that
Yeah.
be? Oh, the train is smoking right
Smoking
there,
under-
yeah.
Under Monument Peak.
My, there were a lot more houses then, weren't there, Pete? Yeah. Oh,
No. I don't know, I can't see.
okay.
Oh, here. Here. This house is right here.
Okay, the house we were in front of is right here.
Right there.
And that was called the hotel then,
Yeah, it was.
kind of.
Hotel.
Uh-huh. Okay, I'll point to the train rather rudely there, but I'll point to that. This was the building we were standing in front of, which is now Pete's home. And very few of these buildings are standing. I can't locate the schoolhouse. It wouldn't be in this picture, would it?
There wasn't none there.
The schoolhouse wasn't built at this time.
It was early days.
Mm-hmm. But my. Did you get it okay?
Doesn't look like that today.
Wow. Isn't that something?
There's the old rock house.
There's the old rock house, which is, we'll get a shot of what is left of the old rock house. Isn't that the one that just part of it is standing there? It is strange how time changes things as the supply and demand for various things.
This is a store.
Dan Miller's store.
Loading burros there, taking groceries up to the
To the mine.
Grand Central. You know what a Grand Central is? What they call it? Anyway, it's the mine at the Grand Central. They were hauling groceries up there. And you don't believe it or not, but that's myself.
Oh, that's Pete?
Yes.
Now here you have Pete with the burro when he was just a small lad. Now he's at 90 years young now, so you could imagine how old this is. Probably taken from a tin plate, or is a tin plate.
It's
That's-
taken up
They
to a
were
mine.
loading the groceries from the store on the burros to take to
Up to the mine. Well,
You saw that safe out there. That's
that safe down there.
Yeah.
we will show you a safe and where it lies now. And this is the building that it was in. Okay. You must remember we're dealing with the richest silver mine known to man in the history, certainly of this country, or I suppose the world, isn't it?
Bridal chamber.
The bridal chamber. I think I said the Queen's throne room, or the bridal chamber. The bridal chamber. We'll
And
give.
You know who, a famous person, one of the famous people in American history, Albert B. Fall, got his start here at that mine.
Well,
In fact, he took a chunk of silver out of there, had his men to put in the buggy. It was so heavy that people couldn't lift it, and he took that on his honeymoon.
well.
Just to, as a display, he said for spending money, but it was so big they couldn't pick it up, so heavy. He just took it to show off. But that was Albert B. Fall, who later became, what was he, Secretary of the Interior?
I believe that's right. It sure is. Well,
And this is where he got his start.
Noah, while you're standing there, and while Pete's looking for another picture, it's snowing here right now, and I wanted you to know what we're keeping warm by. Isn't this the most beautiful old wood-burning cook stove? I mean, the warming closet, water reservoir, the whole works. And she's a whopper, and it is in very good, excellent working order. And would you have anything to say about it, Noah?
I believe the name of it is Banquet, and I think anyone would be proud to own that stove.
Yes, sir.
I told my wife last night that Pete and Savina were moving to a new house in Deming that they bought, and I said, I'm wondering what they're going to do with the stove. And my wife said, I'd love to have a cook stove like that. I'd throw my gas out in the street if I had a stove like that.
I think she already donated to one of the granddaughters.
She donated the stove to her granddaughter when the family
That's what
moved
she
from here.
told.
I'll bet that makes good cornbread, doesn't it, Pete?
Yeah.
Oh, and here we have some very small. I may have to let you move in and lay these down. What do you think?
Go ahead.
Here we have. This is the train in snow, and rather appropriate in as much as this is the smokestack on the engine. And I'm going to back off and probably throw Mike off and give him time to edit here.
Do you remember?
See how deep the snow is? This would be a train that runs from the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe line out to this particular town. And look at the caboose and the snow that was in behind that.
It snowed the railroad cut full at Nut. That's the year that I was telling you about.
That's the
deep
year
snow.
it actually closed. What year was that? 29?
22.
22. And there we see that it actually shut down the Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe. And you can see her huffing and puffing coming up through the draw there. Now that's very interesting.
Here's Here's the store where you show that one while ago. There's but the same one ain't got hasn't got my picture of it.
Oh, this is of the same time when Pete was hauling groceries up to the mine as a lad. Pete doesn't seem to be in this picture, but there you got it. The Keller Miller and Company, General Merchandise, and I'm sure that was like a supermarket that we would call today. Certainly in that day, it was the only one in this part of the country. And of course, a burro, as many might snuff at it, but those little animals, if my memory doesn't fail me, can pack about 200 pounds all day long. A mule about 400 pounds, but they're very sure-footed and they can haul 200 pounds all day long. And nice little animal, and that's why they were so used in this area. Okay.
Well,
I don't know if we can get the goats or not. He'll have to move
Angoras.
closer.
there's the old man's
Angoras.
picture.
And the old man's teacher. Here is a
That's an African goat in the early days. They had
Wow.
these slick hair goats. That's a mohair.
mohair goat.
Actually, they came from Turkey.
Turkey. Oh,
The Angora came from
No.
Turkey.
Pete tells me this is
These
a
are Pete's toys when he was a little boy.
toys for a man that is now 90 years old. You can see him probably enjoying those back when we saw the picture with the burro. And Pete, did you ever attend this school, or were you this school here? Did you ever attend it, or were you an adult when that school was going?
That's him.
Oh,
right
that's
there,
him.
little boy.
Oh,
He
all
went
right.
to school there.
Well, we've sure got to get this. This is Pete, right here, as he attended, and as you can see, the date on this is 1960.
Excuse me, I have to
Right here
show
in
that
this
one.
place. Yes, you go right ahead.
I want them to-
There we have it, 1916. We have another one there.
Get out of here.
I didn't know they had that. I didn't know about that smelter. Where did we put that?
It
Picture.
kind of, I don't know.
I didn't know about that smelter. There it is.
There it is. Okay, now there is the smelter. They had one right on location. Wow, how about that? The smelter, okay.
There's an old mining prospector.
A mining prospector probably drifted into camp here. And he's equipped with mules, one mule and a horse rather than burros.
If you can imagine 3,000 people here, all
I'll show
concerned with mining.
Yeah.
you the house.
Now, is that this house? Oh, it's not. Yes?
Which house is this, Pete?
Huh?
Which house is it?
Is that this house?
Sitting on it.
Oh, we're sitting on it. This is the house we're
This
now
is
in. Mm-hmm. This is quite an old house, and as Pete has said, as we're from the outside, very well built. Adobe was excellent on cool in the heat of the year and warm, easy to keep warm. And also, back in the years we're talking about here, adobe walls afforded good protection like a fort.
And all it cost was the labor. You made them on the spot.
Right.
That's the hotel there. Endicott Hotel.
Endicott Hotel. And where would this be located at? That was
It was just the other side of the gate.
all on the
Right
gate
here.
where we come
The
in.
rock house.
Right. Okay. We'll take a picture of that gate as we go out, and you can see the hotel there. Where it was located, rather.
There's the squaw.
This is
Mrs. Martinez.
This is Mrs. Martinez, and she is
Savina.
and she has been so good to welcome us in on a cold day and put up with us while she's having to prepare for Christmas company. So we're indebted to her for that. Lovely lady. Mr. Martinez, we certainly thank you.
Well, don't mention it.
We have seen some history here that young people in this country and the larger cities can see, but perhaps we'll never have an opportunity to experience.
I'm more pictures, but I don't know where they are. I just dug up this morning.
Well, they are certainly priceless, and can you remember back playing with this little automobile right here?
Oh, yeah.
Well, takes.
I hit some more. I don't know where Sidney brought them home.
Well, it goes back in time.
Iron horses.
Well, here you have a gentleman in his 90s that has grown up in this neighborhood. So we call down here this neck of the woods, and certainly has seen many things come to pass. We've got a lot to be proud of in America, and it would seem that we have forces today that would try to take away our pioneer way of living, our cattlemen, our grazing rights, and many other things, or even possibly threaten. Now that's the word, and we're looking and preserving the history of this great nation where people have lived peacefully with the right to pursue peace and happiness. And yes, there's been skirmishes between the people that were here first, the American Indians, and other travelers through this great Rio Grande Valley. But certainly it's been a privilege to be invited into this home that goes back so very many years and see a piece of American heritage that very people rarely will ever have an opportunity to see. You've been there, invited into the home of Mr. and Mrs. Pedro Martinez here at an old ranch and the old silver mine, one of the greatest. We'll be talking more about the mine in a little bit.
Come here, say in their middle age or later, that are in the locale, in maybe 50, 100 miles, and they'll say, it's so peaceful here, I want to be buried here.
Well,
and you can't see it from here. It's right over that road going up. It's right. Well, you can see the gate, the entrance to it, those two tall posts.
yes.
And not only did they bury the people, but still there are people being buried there.
Well,
I know a few years ago, a man that I had known from this country for many, many years, I bought some land from him. He died in Tucson. His stepdaughter asked me if I would lead the ceremony for him, and they buried him over there. They brought his ashes, that female brought his ashes. Wow.
did you get the horny toad already?
No.
This rock building here, is that one of the older buildings?
Yeah, that was we had a good picture of that when it was built. They just picked up rocks and used mud mortar and put it together.
Yeah, there's the horny toad down there climbing over the mountain.
That was a fascinating visit.
But I didn't know until he told me that they had built it in 4 different waves. I didn't know that.
And it makes sense.
But he's not remembering everything right. I wanted him to tell you the story of how Latham's became the big cattleman. And he said that they had sheep, which was true, And then he said one of the wives gathered dogie calves and raised them. Really, the truth is that nuns and Lathams, the nuns came here to work in the mines, and the Lathams came to be cattlemen, came out of Texas, and the nuns came from Tennessee. And then when the mines played out, the nuns didn't want to leave. They liked the country and they were used to it, and they liked cattle, so they went in the cattle business, and they were partners with the Lathams, and they formed what was called the Sierra Land and Cattle Company, and the brand they put on the cattle was SLC. That's what everyone here calls it, SLC. And it included all of this country, all the way to the railroad, all the way from Hillsboro, all the way to the Rio Grande, from there to the Black Range, and all the way to the railroad.
Oh, we're talking about thousands of acres.
Right, and thousands of head of cattle. And then they had sheep, and they had cattle, and then they had a cattle war, and several people killed down there about that big peak that you barely can see. And I suppose that must have cost them a lot, and maybe it cost them credibility with the bankers. I don't know for sure what caused it, but then there was a terrible depression, and I'm talking about 1921, and there was a terrible depression and a drought, and they went broke. And then the way I've always heard it from all the people in this country is that one of the nuns' wives raised 50 dogie calves that they just picked up here and there on the range of stray cows. And the men were chopping wood and trapping coyotes or anything they could to buy groceries. And with those 50 dogie calves she raised, that's how they got back in the cow business. And then this partnership was split because it was bankrupt, and then each family started back on their own. And today, the descendant of one of those nuns owns land down here that owns and leases land. I think he runs maybe 2,500 mother cows.
Wow.
So he is a survivor.
You bet he's a survivor. Well,
He
he comes from good stock.
And these people came from digging in the mines.
Well,
And today they are the backbone of this country. So.
well, that's great.
But you can see the foundations. You can see one right here where there was big buildings. But this whole thing was buildings. Everything just like any city.
Yeah, there's a pretty good wall right there. Don't know what that could have been. Looks like they had some kind of a big pump or something mounted there.
That probably was part of her oil and gas business. That's what it was. Here's the other pipe. This is where she had her warehouse right here.
Well.
Oh, this is the bridge that's just a bridge for the water to flow.
We get a pretty good runoff here, don't we?
At times, sometimes you'll have a 3 or 4 inch rain and it will come down.
That door, looks like they broke it out of there just about. Somebody has a mark cut into that. I suppose there have been a lot of proceeds for the company went through that old building. Yeah, there's building. You can see foundations all around this place.
Now you can look at it.
These are all tailings out here, aren't they?
Yeah.
That's the back side of the mine.
One of the entrances.
Now that big load, was that an Indian cache?
It was a cavern, underground cavern. And it was what they call free silver. Usually silver is mixed with different forms of rock. This was pure.
Wow.
There was nothing with it, just pure silver. And just like goblets, like little round balls hanging and all kinds of,
Oh man.
it was just pure silver.
Never anything.
And that's the way the Indians came in when I was talking about the war here. Now if you start looking on these hills over here, you'll see where there were some of the dugouts. You'll just see bare patches where the grass hasn't grown on. And I thought for years that they were prospect holes. But Pete told me they lived in those holes.
Well,
I couldn't understand that, and then finally when I looked at them, I realized they were dugouts. And right about here, let's stop right here.
there's one right
There's
there.
one right there. Watch those mesquites, it'll make it look flat. And that's where I told you about the saloon. The saloon was a dugout. and when Pete told me that the two men, they either didn't pay the guy or something happened. Nobody ever knew because he didn't talk. And when they got out of pistol range, they were packing pistols, and he went back in his bar and got a rifle, and he killed them somewhere down there in that flat part down there. And Pete said they buried them there, but he said a flood had piled so many rocks up you can't find the graves anymore.
Well,
And I went up here with Pete that day, a few years ago, and he showed me that where the bar was there, or saloon he called it, and I went around it looking, and I found an oxen shoe right in front of it. I still have it today.
you want to walk up there? Sure.
Now you'll understand that the war we're talking about here, which is right over the hill there, and I think those Indians probably came in from the back to attack this place, and maybe they came in from that canyon, or maybe they had their horses hidden back over there and they came in without the whites even though they're there. But this is a war between guns, not bows and arrows. By this time, Victoria had armed himself, and the way he did it was from the cavalry.
Well,
He went over there when he first left the reservation. See, the Warm Springs Apaches were up here above Tier C toward Monticello. That's the Warm Springs is the name of a spring there, hot springs. They call it Warm Springs. And that's where they were. And then the Army or the government decided that they had to leave there over toward Ruidoso, where the Apaches are today. And they rebelled. They would have been peaceful in the place if they just left them alone. But the government had to interfere. Force them to go over there as some kind of punishment or for some reason. And then Victoria said, I won't stay, I'll go on the rampage. So he talked to the men, and some of the young men went with him. And they walked over from the mountains at Ruidoso and came through the gap over here by Tier C, and they went up to the San Mateo Mountains, which are between Tier C and Albuquerque, and they knew where there was a box canyon. They had planned it carefully, and they could set up an ambush. And these men were afoot with bows and arrows and sticks. And they lured the cavalry, a detachment of cavalry, to follow them in there. They were searching for these renegade Indians, the cavalry was, and so someone said, hey, we got a glimpse of them going up this canyon. So the cavalry went into the canyon after them. They killed the cavalrymen, took the guns, took the horses, and that's when they first became mobile. And then from then, they would attack more cavalry and get more horses and more guns. And that's how they made their rampage. And then one of the battles was right here.
Now this old cavalry shell right here could well have been a flake off
It
for
could.
this battle.
They
right
could have been running, and in fact, they no doubt were. Because the Indians won, which means the cavalry ran.
Right.
We'll go over there. It's just right over there.
Okay.
It was what it was a way station. They called it the Mike Evers Ranch, but it wasn't. It was a way station. And of course, in those days, they did keep oxen, kept horses to trade. So I guess you could call it a ranch, but it wasn't like a cattle ranch today. But everywhere you look, you're going to find things. There's an ancient, look at that beautiful old button.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that something?
Put that in your museum.
Oh man, Charlene, did you see this?
It was off a lady's coat.
We want to tag that.
It was off a lady's coat.
Evers
Evers Ranch.
way station. That might have been a lady out of
Now look, this is an old skillet, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Dutch oven.
Dutch
Mm-hmm. Sure is. And the Indians came in through the brush over the back and started attacking. And they went out of here horseback, and the rider that went out of here for help went down that way into that valley. There's a big deep valley down there where people live today and farm. And that's where the rancher was. There was actually a natural lake down there at that time. And he went by there and told the rancher, the Indians have attacked, I'm going for the cavalry. And then he rode on around that hill to Hatch, to Fort Thorne, which there was no Hatch then, and to Fort Thorne. And someone got word to...
We got him turned on.
Someone got word to the miner, the man that owned the mine, that the Indians had attacked Mike Evers Ranch. And he came out to see what was going on. And in the battle, the miner was killed. He never knew that he struck the bridle chamber. The rancher brought his cowboys to watch the fun, and they all got killed. And the captain of the cavalry got killed, and his men ran. Victoria won that battle. And this rock wall, you can see the rock wall here. This was still standing this high when I was a kid, and I didn't know what it was.
Well.
And the highway department came along and took these rocks out a load at a time and to plug gullies with and tore the building down.
Now the Indians, you think, probably came over this hill.
I think that's their nature. That's their nature, to come and they no doubt kept hidden until the first shots were fired, and then they stayed hidden. They would shoot and run and hide and shoot and run and hide. You couldn't even find your enemy. Is that a bottle or is that a snuff bottle? Is that a whiskey bottle or a snuff bottle?
I believe that's a snuff bottle. Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
It is glass. It's
Mm-hmm. And the first time it was burned by Victoria, and then a few years later, after he was killed, Nana came back and raided it again, and when he destroyed it, it was never rebuilt.
And Nina took over after Victoria.
Victoria was killed in Mexico. When the cavalry here was chasing them, they went into a mountain west of Juarez. Between there and Casas Grandes, there's a little separate range of mountains, and that's where he was staying with his people, women and children and his warriors. And Nana was gone on a raiding party with some the men when Victoria got killed. And it was kind of a fluke. There was an Indian in Mexico who discovered him, who was part of the Mexican army at that time. And for that, after the battle and Victoria was killed and all of the women and children were killed, that man was given a new rifle as pay for finding Victoria,
Wow.
for the destruction of Victoria. And Nana was so angry that when he came and took over, he became 10 times more vicious than Victoria.
Tell me, like, when that particular group, when they were, I don't know if it would be fair to say running from the cavalry, it was more or less leading the cavalry, I might
Right.
say.
Right.
That, is it true that, like, how they would do their animals if one played out? How did they resupplied
Yes.
themselves
Right.
that way?
Right.
Would
They
you-
they killed the cavalry to get new guns and ammunition and horses. They deliberately fought the cavalry. This is their only source of the weapons.
and if a horse fell or played out,
They ate him.
they ate him, drank
If
the
they were
blood for
if they
liquor?
were running, they stripped the meat off and carried it with them. Just threw it over their shoulders in long strips. And a few years ago, you could go into Mexico to any meat market in Juarez, and you'd find strips of meat that big around and 3 or 4 foot long just hanging from the rafters, and you'd go buy a strip of meat. And these Indians threw that over their shoulders and kept riding, and the sun was beating down on it, drying it, and then when they'd stop at night, they'd roast it and have a party.
Well, I'll say, well, it'd be, now that's called resupply on the move.
And to give you some examples of what you were saying, they led the cavalry. There's a mountain over there in the San Andres, which is across the Rio Grande, the extension north from the Organs that changes into the San Andres. And there's a mountain over there south of Mockingbird Gap, where it's a big round mountain, high, much higher than this, and big round mountain. And Victoria led the cavalry. They were chasing him, but he was leading them.
He was leading them.
He was waiting out in front, and he led them around and around that mountain before they finally understood what he was doing. He was playing with them. And then when he got ready to end the game, he just disappeared, and they're still going around the mountain looking for him. And that's the genius of the man. He was brilliant. And he fought up here north of Hillsboro. There's a big canyon coming through there that was running water that now Jane Fonda and Ted Turner own the ladder ranch.
Oh,
And that's where they fought many of their battles.
well,
And they fought one big battle there, and Victoria stunned the cavalry, and they went back. And to show how victorious he was, to show his pride, there's a trail along the Black Range up over these hills, and before you get to the top, it kind of levels out, and the Indians had regular highways through there. Today we call them forest ranger trails or cattleman's trails. The Indians built those trails.
well,
And anyway, Victoria from the Animas, then he rode up into the Black Range and through that trail and came back down through Hillsboro, which was a town by then, a mining town. And to show his pride and his disdain of the authorities of the whites, he had his men to follow him, and he rode single file through town to show his power, not grouped, single file. And all the people ran inside and locked the doors and pulled the blinds, and there was not a shot fired. And he rode through there and then came over here and tore this down.
well.
And I'm sure, since you know their way of their method of fighting, that they came in through the brush and through the rocks. They used all of those things to hide them.
Right.
And I'm sure they kept their horses right over behind the hill, so when they did want to leave here, and there was one man over there watching the horses, they could all run and get their horse and be gone.
And
But they were victorious, so they didn't have to run. They did, but because that was their nature, let's get out before they bring the cavalry from the members and from the other places, and they just rode from here to Mexico. And every time they'd make a raid, they'd do that. They'd just go on down into Mexico and rest a while. And
now there we have recorded here on this spot one of the raids by Victoria, and you're really, as far as our nation is concerned, this is a historical spot that we're standing on. It's been stripped, as Noel has shared with us. Yes, it has. Very few people even know, and we're not going to say, but this is our heritage. This is how it happened. And when we have a nation that is one nation under God, and we have a nation that all people have an opportunity, there's still a lot of area in this nation that no one need feel helpless or need not feel distressed to the point that they can take no pride in our nation. Because certainly the history that has gone by in yesteryears is enough to last us, but at the same time to cause a young person to want to take pride in our nation, our heritage, help preserve it, and enjoy it. So you're here at the Mike Ivers. This would be a way station. It was
A way station. They call them Mike Ivers Ranch.
Yeah, right. And destroyed once by Victoria, and then by his lieutenant after Victoria was killed. And certainly there was a lot of action on this very spot we're now standing. Noel, thanks for sharing it with us. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'm glad to add something to history of this country.